die on a predator planet, abandoned, unarmed, and alone. But what the galaxy didn't count on was her refusing to die. Among beasts feared by all, she didn't just survive. She earned their respect, their trust, and something more. This isn't a story about escape. It's a story about becoming something stronger than fear. Stay with us. This is the tale of Lyra 10, the exile who became a legend. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. Lyra 10 stood alone beneath the harsh white lights of the tribunal chamber. The room was too quiet, filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Tall, wide-eyed, armored, tentacled, each seated in silent judgment. Her wrists were locked, in glowing energy restraints, though she didn't struggle. She wasn't afraid, but she was tired. Tired of pretending she didn't notice the distrust in their eyes. Tired of being treated like a threat just for being human. At the center of the curved chamber sat the head magistrate, a pale green figure with a thin, insect-like body and long limbs that twitched with every movement. The magistrate's voice buzzed through the chamber. "You understand the charges brought against you?" Lyra tilted her head slightly. "Yes. I understand you think I was committing espionage by walking down a public corridor." The magistrate's mandibles clicked. "You were found in a restricted zone." "I was looking for a bathroom," she replied, her voice dry. "Your signs are awful." A ripple of discomfort moved through the watching council members. Her sarcasm made them uneasy. Humans always unsettled them, too blunt, too emotional, too unpredictable. Lyra knew that, but she wasn't going to change her tone to make them feel better. "Not now. Claiming ignorance of our customs does not excuse the violation," the magistrate snapped. "No, but tackling a guest at a diplomatic reception doesn't exactly scream, 'Welcome,' does it?" She shot back. "Maybe if your guards were less trigger-happy and your buildings less confusing, we wouldn't be having this conversation." The murmurs grew louder. Aliens whispered in their own languages, and a few glared openly at her. Lyra stood still, her gaze steady, daring them to say more. The magistrate raised two of its limbs, and the chamber fell silent again. "The tribunal has reached its decision. Execution would violate the Terran Protection Treaty. Imprisonment would create political complications." "How considerate," Lyra muttered. The magistrate continued, voice calm and cruel. "You are sentenced to exile on Valen 9. A sharp wave of noise broke across the room. Shock, disbelief, even fear. Valen 9 was a name spoken only in quiet tones, the kind of place used to scare younglings into behaving. A planet filled with wild, untamed predators. Not a prison, but a death sentence hidden under legal terms. Lyra blinked. "Valen 9? That's not legal. The treaty says you must be relocated to a habitable world. It does not specify which one. You're sending me to a predator planet as a technicality?" The magistrate almost looked pleased. "We are giving you a chance to live in an environment more suited to your background. Valen 9 is only a Category 9 on the galactic hazard scale. For a human, that should be a minor challenge." Lyra stared. "You think dropping me into a jungle full of apex predators is reasonable?" The magistrate nodded. "For your kind, yes. It should be what you call a walk in the park." No one laughed. No one needed to. The cold logic of the decision spoke for itself. The tribunal was not interested in truth or justice. They wanted her gone, out of sight, out of the Alliance. No one would come for her. No one would even check if she survived. Lyra's presence made them uncomfortable. Her strength, her stubbornness, her humanity. They didn't understand her, so they chose to fear her. 3 days later, she was inside a cramped drop pod, strapped into a hard metal seat as the ship's AI announced final approach. Valen 9 hung beneath her, a storm-wrapped planet covered in thick green forests and endless oceans. From above, it looked peaceful, almost beautiful. Lyra knew better. "Descent beginning," the AI stated in a pleasant voice. "Survival equipment, Will be provided as per Exile Protocol 9B. She exhaled slowly. What's in the survival kit? A letter asking the locals not to eat me. 1 multi-tool, 1 thermal blanket, 1 water purifier, 1 emergency beacon, 1 data file on native life forms. Great. And I suppose the data file is encoded in some language I can't read. Correct. The pod shook as it entered the atmosphere. Lyra tightened her straps and closed her eyes for a second. She had done plenty of rough landings in her time, but this one felt different. There would be no team to pull her out, no orders, no backup, just her. The pod slammed into the surface of the planet with a jolt that knocked the breath out of her. When the door hissed open, heavy, humid air rushed in, filled with the scent of strange plants and distant rot. Lyra stepped outside and stared at the towering trees with bark like burned metal and leaves as wide as solar panels. Everything pulsed with quiet danger. Beacon active, the AI reported. This unit will now self-destruct to prevent technological contamination. What? Lyra spun. Exile protocol. You have 3 minutes to evacuate. You could have told me sooner. This unit assumed it was obvious. Lyra was already running. Behind her, the pod exploded, sending a wave of smoke and heat rolling through the jungle. She didn't stop until the forest swallowed the clearing. No ship, no shelter, no backup. She was truly alone now, and the predators of Valen 9 were already watching. The air on Valen 9 was thick and heavy, clinging to Lyra 10's skin like a wet blanket. She crouched beneath a twisted tree, catching her breath, the echo of the pod's explosion still ringing in her ears. Smoke curled in the distance behind her, rising above the alien jungle. The sky above was a strange shade of violet. The sun, a dull orange glow behind clouds that never seemed to stop moving. Around her, the forest pulsed with quiet life. Strange birds made short, sharp cries. Insects hummed low and constant. But beneath it all, there was a silence that pressed on, her ears, a warning in the wild. Lyra stood up slowly, adjusting the straps on her jumpsuit. Her fingers brushed the few supplies she'd managed to grab before fleeing the pod. A small water purifier, a basic multi-tool, a thin thermal blanket, and the beacon, cold and quiet against her collar, waiting to light up only if she died. She gave it a bitter look. Thanks for nothing, she muttered. She took a deep breath and started moving. There were no paths here. The trees stretched up in all directions, their massive trunks wrapped in glowing vines. The ground was soft and uneven, covered in moss that sparkled faintly in the fading light. Every step was a gamble. Was that plant safe? Would that patch of ground hold her weight? Was something watching from the shadows? She walked slowly at first, alert, every sense sharp. Her military training helped. But this world was something else entirely. Earth had its dangers, sure, but not like this. Everything here seemed exaggerated. The colors were more intense. The air was heavier. Even the silence felt alive. Hours passed. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows that made it harder to tell where one thing ended and another began. Lyra had found a stream, a narrow ribbon of water cutting through the forest floor. She ran the purifier and took careful sips, watching the forest in every direction. No movement. No sound. Still, she didn't relax. Something about the quiet made her skin crawl. She didn't know much about Valen 9. The Confederation didn't share many details. What she had heard was mostly rumors, stories whispered in training halls and mess rooms, tales of beasts that moved without sound, creatures that used tools, entire expeditions that vanished without a trace. The Confederation had called it a nature preserve. Lyra knew better. It was a dumping ground for things they didn't want to deal with. As night crept in, the forest changed. The trees began to glow softly from within, casting blue and green light across the mossy floor. The air cooled just enough to send a chill through her jumpsuit. She scanned the trees for a safe spot and found a large one with thick roots that curved upward, forming a sort of shelter. It wasn't much, but it would do for the night. She gathered a few fallen leaves and arranged them into a makeshift mat. Her hands moved on instinct, fast and efficient. She'd been in survival situations before. She knew how to make do with little, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't alone. Every now and then, she'd catch something, just a flicker at the edge of her vision, a shift in the light, a rustle where there shouldn't be one. At first, she told herself it was just her mind playing tricks, but after the third time, she knew better. She was being followed. She didn't panic, she didn't run, she just kept walking, calmly as if she hadn't noticed. But every so often she changed direction slightly, took an unexpected turn, doubled back, and each time she'd catch it again, a shape low to the ground, or a glint of something too bright for shadow. Whatever it was patient. It didn't charge. It didn't growl or scream. It watched, learned, waited. By the time the forest was fully dark, Lyra had found another clearing. This one was lit by the soft glow of bioluminescent plants clinging to the rocks. She crouched near the base of a tall tree and took out her multi-tool, flipping through its scanner settings. It hummed faintly, showing nothing on the immediate sensors. But that didn't mean she was safe. She pretended to settle in, laying out the blanket, stretching her arms, yawning. But she never turned her back to the woods. Her fingers stayed close to the tool's sharpened edge. And then it came. The attack was sudden, fast and silent. A blur of dark scales and sharp claws burst from the trees, aimed straight at her. Lyra didn't scream. She moved. She rolled to the side, the creature missing her by inches, hitting the ground with a heavy thud. It turned instantly, more agile than she expected, and she caught her first real look at it. It stood on two powerful legs, easily 2 meters tall. Its body was lean and muscled, covered in overlapping plates of dark gray armor. Its arms ended in clawed hands, and its head was long, with deep-set eyes that glowed like coals. Its mouth opened in a hiss, revealing rows of sharp teeth, but it didn't attack again. Not yet. It stared. Lyra rose slowly, crouched in a ready stance, weapon in hand. "You want to try again?" she said softly, not expecting an answer. But the creature tilted its head, and then it spoke. "You are not prey." The words were rough, broken, but clear. Lyra froze. Her heart was pounding, but her voice was steady. "No, I'm not." The creature blinked, its pupils narrowing. It stepped back, just slightly. "Why here?" "Human." Lyra took a deep breath. "They sent me here to die." The creature was quiet, for a long moment. Then it laughed, a deep, strange sound that rumbled through the trees. "Fools," it said. "They send fire into the forest, and wonder why it burns." Lyra didn't know what that meant. Not yet. But she knew one thing for sure. This planet was dangerous, but she wasn't the only one here who could speak. Lyra didn't lower her weapon. Not yet. The creature stood just a few meters away, muscles tensed, claws half-curled. But it didn't move. It didn't lunge. It just watched her with those glowing eyes full of something she hadn't expected. Curiosity. Not mindless hunger. Not wild rage. This creature, whatever it was thinking. It had spoken. Not perfectly, not fluently, but clearly enough to understand. That changed everything. "You're not going to eat me?" she asked, her voice low. The creature blinked, the vertical slits of its pupils narrowing. "Eat? No. You... different." Lyra slowly lowered the multi-tool but didn't put it away. "You've seen humans before?" The creature hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Old ones came. Long time. Did not stay." "What happened to them?" It tilted its head again. "They feared. They ran." Lyra looked around at the dense, glowing forest. She could imagine it. Even now, part of her wanted to run, to disappear into the trees and vanish before anything else found her. But another part, the stronger part, was rooted to the ground. She wasn't going to run. She never had. "My name's Lyra," she said, carefully. The creature made a clicking sound deep in its throat. "I am Caven." She tried repeating it. "Kyvan?" A nod. "Close." Kyvan stepped forward slowly as if not to alarm her. Lyra didn't back away. Every instinct told her this was a risk, but she also knew when fear had to be ignored. Kyvan was watching her, testing her response. He wasn't just some wild beast, he was making a decision, and she had a feeling this moment mattered. "Why do you help me?" she asked. Caven gave a low, short sound, maybe amusement. "I do. Not help. Curious. You survive crash. You fight. You speak. Not prey." Lyra gave a short laugh. "That's a low bar for friendship." Caven blinked again, then turned his head, gesturing with one clawed hand. "Come. Night here. Not safe." She didn't move. "Why would I follow you?" Caven looked at her over one shoulder. "Stay then. See how long your fire lasts." He started walking, smooth and silent, through the thick brush. Lyra looked around the clearing once more, then back at the dark shapes between the trees. Her small camp wasn't going to protect her from whatever else was out there. And if Caven wanted to kill her, he'd already had the chance. She followed. Caven moved like a shadow through the forest, stepping around roots and under low branches with practiced ease. Lyra stumbled more than once but kept pace as best she could. Her boots sank into soft moss. Leaves brushed her arms. Sounds echoed in the distance, strange cries and low growls, but nothing came close. After nearly an hour, they reached a narrow ridge. Below it lay a valley glowing with soft blue light. Trees here were taller, clustered closer, and within them, Lyra saw something she didn't expect: structures. Built into the roots and trunks of the massive trees were homes, shaped from wood, stone, and pieces of what looked like broken metal. It wasn't primitive. It was purposeful. "Others live here?" she asked. Caven nodded. "My kind. We stay out of Skywatcher's way." Lyra didn't ask who the Skywatchers were. She already knew. The Confederation, the ones who wrote treaties, built rules, and made decisions from safe distances, the ones who had dropped her here without a second thought. They descended the ridge in silence. At the base, two figures stepped out of the shadows. One was taller than Kyvan, wearing armor that looked carved from bone. The other was smaller, with pale markings across its face. Both looked at Lyra, then back at Kyvan. Words passed quickly in a language she didn't understand. The tone was cautious, but not hostile. Caven turned to her. "They will not harm, but they watch." "I get that a lot," Lyra muttered. Inside the settlement, everything was quiet. Children watched from behind trees. Elders sat near glowing fire pits. No one screamed. No one panicked. Some stared, others whispered. But no, one attacked. Caven led her to a large tree whose roots formed a low shelter. Inside was a simple space, dry and warm, lit by a soft blue glow from the walls. He motioned for her to sit, then offered a pouch of water. She took it cautiously. "You could have left me," she said after a moment. "Yes," Caven agreed, "but you are not like Skywatchers. You fight, you speak, you think. You do too." Caven made that low clicking sound again. "We always did, they just never saw." Lyra looked down at the water in her hands. "They sent me here to die." Caven leaned back against the wall. "Now you live. That is better." The simplicity of his words hit harder than she expected. No excuses. No lies. Just truth. The Confederation had discarded her like broken equipment. But here, among creatures they had written off as beasts, she was being treated with something closer to respect. "Will your people accept me?" she asked. Caven was quiet for a long time. "They will see what you do. That is enough." Lyra nodded. That, at least, was something she understood. Respect wasn't given here. It was earned. But she was still alive. still fighting. That was more than they had expected. And for the first time since her sentence, Lyra 10 didn't feel completely alone. Lyra 10 stood at the edge of the settlement, watching the sky turn a deeper shade of violet as Valen 9's sun dipped below the horizon. The wind carried the scent of wildflowers mixed with damp earth, and the forest pulsed with quiet life. She had been here for several weeks now, long enough for the wounds on her hands to heal, for the weight of betrayal to become a dull ache instead of a sharp sting. She no longer felt like an outsider. Not fully. Not anymore. The others had begun to speak to her. At first, only short words, cautious greetings, curious glances, then slowly questions. Simple ones. Why she had come, what she knew, how she fought. They admired her toughness. Not just the way she held a weapon or tracked through the forest, but how she listened, how she tried to understand. Lyra didn't pretend to be a hero. She told the truth. How the Confederation had cast her aside without a second thought. How they had feared what they didn't bother to know. Khyven had become her closest companion. They trained together, hunted together, sat by fires and shared stories, even if most of hers were told in broken phrases and gestures. He spoke of his people, of their quiet survival, their history before, the stars, their battles against being tamed. Lyra spoke of Earth, of its chaos and strength, and of the places that didn't make it into diplomatic reports. They came from different worlds, but neither of them belonged to the polished halls of the Galactic Alliance. They had more in common than either had expected. One night, after a long walk through the glowing woods, Khyven handed her something unexpected. A small device shaped from a mix of salvaged tech and native materials. It pulsed with soft green light. She turned it over in her hands, eyebrows raised. It sends message, he explained. Far, to Skywatchers. You speak. Lyra stared at the device. A way to contact the outside. A way to remind them she was still alive. It was a chance she hadn't expected. Not a rescue, not a weapon, just a voice. Her voice. She didn't decide right away. For 3 days, she kept the device close, unsure. What would she say? What could she possibly tell them that they hadn't already decided not to hear? She was just one person, one soldier, one exile. But as she watched the community around her, watched the children learn to track silently, watched the elders tell stories under the stars, watched warriors share food with respect and laughter, she understood something. They had been painted as monsters by people who never bothered to learn their names, just like her. So on the 4th day, she climbed to the highest ridge near the valley and activated the device. This is Lyra 10, she said, her voice steady, the words slow and clear. I was exiled to Valen 9 by order of the Galactic Tribunal. I was expected to die here, but I didn't. She paused, letting the silence stretch before continuing. You called this planet uninhabitable. You called its people dangerous. You said they couldn't be reasoned with. You were wrong. I've lived among them. I've eaten with them. I've learned their ways. They are not monsters. They are not mindless. They are proud, intelligent, and far more honorable than the politicians who condemned them. Her fingers tightened around the device. You sent me here thinking I wouldn't survive, but you didn't understand what survival means. It's not just living through the day. It's choosing to build, to trust, to fight when no one believes in you. You didn't send me to my death. You sent me home. She clicked off the device and placed it on the rock beside her. Whether anyone heard her or not didn't matter. The words had been said. The silence that followed was peaceful, not empty. Behind her, the trees swayed gently in the wind. Weeks turned into months. The seasons shifted. Lyra became a guide, a warrior, and in time, a voice among the people. She helped teach the children tactics, helped organize defenses against the few real dangers the forest still held, and learned their language more fluently every day. Khyven remained by her side, a friend who had once been a hunter but had become something far more, an ally who understood her in ways no human ever had. The message was never answered. No ship came. No apology arrived. The Confederation, seemed preferred silence. But their silence didn't matter anymore. One evening, as the stars blinked into view overhead, Lyra stood on the same ridge where she had spoken into the unknown. Below her, lights flickered in the trees, homes built with care, people moving with purpose, laughter echoing through the night. She had been thrown away by those who thought they knew everything. But in being cast out, she had found something they would never understand. A place that didn't judge her by her species. A people who measured worth by action, not by birth. A future she hadn't expected, but one she had earned. Lyra smiled to herself as the wind moved through her hair. She was no longer the exile. She was something more. She was one of them.